sunshine than others, I see, Alan. Mr. Allen, good evening. Nice to see people in suits, isn't it, really, in the chamber? Councillor Sumner's got a three-piece suit on, and that is going beyond. I often say to people, they didn't take their jackets off at Rorke's Drift, you know. So you know. They did in Henley this year. Yeah. They did in Henley this year. Rorke's Drift's going to be in Henley.
They did in Henley this year. They were allowed to take the jackets off.
Standard slipping.
No ties.
I tell you what. I tell you what. When Ridgeway comes into being, they'll put their jackets back on at Henley. How about that? Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Jeff Brooks, the leader of the council. I'd like to welcome you to today's executive meeting. We have a number of members of the public here, and of course we're online, so we may have some tuning in, particularly on asking questions. So let's get cracking. Nikki, Sam, apologies for absence, please, sir.
Thank you, Leader. We have had apologies from Councillors Heather Codlin, Councillor Vicky Poole, and Councillor David Marsh.
Thank you very much. The minutes, members, looking at my side over here, you have them of the 22nd of May. I'd be grateful if somebody would propose they be approved. Thank you, Councillor Foote. Yeah. Apologies for you should have been on there. Okay, got that, Mr. Chipperton? Thank you very much. So I've got a proposer from Councillor Foote. Have I got a seconder, please? Councillor Gawley. All those in favour of adopting the minutes from last meeting on 22nd of May? Thank you very much. So adopted. Declarations of interest. Have we had any declarations of interest, Mr. Chipperton?
None received, Leader.
Thank you. Then we will press on. Sorry, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Could I declare an interest in item 9, as I work for a charity, although the charity I work for is not mentioned and I don't think involved, but I think in the interest of being open. And also item 11, as I'm employed by the Royal Berks charity, which is part of the Royal Berks NHS Foundation Trust. Again, I don't believe it should preclude me from being able to ask questions and take part in debate.
And I'm rather hoping for your support on the BSO MOU. We will see. Are you also Councillor Sumner?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, similar on item 11, as head of contracts for the Royal Berks as an NHS FT. We do often get included in these conversations, and that often extends to provision of community services. So declaring on that basis. Thank you.
I'm sure Nikki would tell us that that is noted, but it's not pecuniary from my point of view. So please take a full part as much as you want to in the debate. Public questions, members of the executive to answer questions. We've had a number put forward. The question will appear on the screen, be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. Then there'll be a supplementary requested. The supplementary must be relevant to principally clarify the response, not to introduce other angles or new business to the subject matter. Time limit for public questions, 30 minutes. I think we'll get through them in that time. Let's see how we get on. First one up, Mr. Allen, if you'd like to come forward to the lectern, sir. You don't need to read your question out, but it will be picked up by Councillor Gawley. It should be on screen. It is. Councillor Gawley, over to you.
Yeah. Mr. Allen, thank you for your question. It's important to stress that the extension to pedestrianisation in Newbury is a trial and with a more substantive statutory and longer lasting 6 months consultation underway at the moment. This is to ensure that we capture the residents' lived experiences to ensure that a reasoned and balanced decision is made following the trial. This was a manifesto commitment and is supported by Newbury Town Council, and it was considered that there was enough support to conduct the trial and a more substantive consultation, which will help us inform that longer-term decision-making going forward, as well as other metrics. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Councillor. Yes, thank you. But before I do get to that, I'd just like to say that in terms of this trial, there's been a lot of people saying it's a short-term one, but it really isn't. It's 6 months, which will be half of people.
Now, Mr. Allen, I'm going to stop you because what you've done, you've decided to make a statement when I specifically said I'd like you to ask a supplementary which clarifies the response.
I apologize.
So if you could form it in a question, I'd be grateful, sir.
I will. My question is, how will the council dictate whether or not the trial has been a success?
There are many metrics, as discussed, that we will kind of look at across the trial period, in things like footfall, things like dwell time, as well as consultation responses, both the quantitative ones and also the qualitative ones that we asked for at the time of that consultation. So there will be a well-rounded decision-making process in this, and as I said, I'm keen to hear those kind of lived experiences of residents and businesses and visitors that make the most of the extended pedestrianisation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Allen. We now move on to Mr. Morgan. If you hope you're okay, Mr. Morgan. How's your back? You're walking more freely? Lovely. Councillor Gawley again.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Morgan, for your question. As you've noted, the council has moved from a flat rate fee to a variable charge based on council tax bands. This change was approved as part of the council's 25-26 revenue budget and published in the fees and charges schedule. In response to your request for calculations, I'll run through them, so apologies if it's a bit wordy. So for the first example, under the flat fee, there were, based on historic data, 34,423 subscribers, and at £55 per household, which was lower than the previous year. The total revenue generated would be obviously the 34,000 times by 55, which is 1.89 million. The second part of the question relating to the variable fee structure, as is this year, based on council tax bands. So assuming the same number of subscriptions, the 34,500, spread over the council tax bands in the data that we have. So based on that distribution of subscribers across council tax bands A to H, with charges ranging from 40 to 75, the total projected revenue under this model is 1.99 million. I think it's really important to note that even at the highest price band, the council's garden waste subscription service remains competitively priced when compared with the flat rates charged by other neighbouring authorities, many of which are well above £80. And it's also really important to note that with this model, 55% of subscribers will be paying less than when we came to power in 2023. Sorry for the amount of words there, but I hope I've answered that question. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. But first of all, I'd like to commend you on your transparency because you've answered the question. So applaud you for doing that. So thank you very much for doing that. Appreciate that. So basically, you're looking at 100k more coming out from. So yeah, I'd be curious to see what band I'm in. I'm curious to see if my band's paying more than everyone else. So if you have that information, that'd be useful.
If
you
you
can send that to me in writing, that's
if you let me know what band you're in, happy to answer that
Yeah,
question.
my supplementary question is this then. In terms of the accounts which are due out now, which the public can come and have a look at, does this revenue show on the accounts as income on your accounts?
It will show as a saving. I don't know if that, because income, local authorities aren't here to make profit. We're here to serve residents. So it's reflected as a saving, I believe, isn't it? Rather
Does
than
that
an
mean
income.
that you're fair?
Yeah, Mr. Morgan, I'm looking to Shannon Coleman Slaughter. I think while we feel we know, I know she will know. So over to you.
Sorry to interrupt there. I'm listening. I'm curious to see.
In the accounts, we're
Yes.
talking about the accounts, which is different to our budget proposals. The accounts, it would be an income in our accounts. It is money
Will I
that
be able to
comes
see that when I
in.
come and have a look at the accounts next week?
You will be able to track it in the net cost of service.
Okay, not as income then.
It is in the net cost
Okay,
of
great.
service.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing it. Thank you very much. It's very clear. Thank you.
I'm on to C then. Mr. Pearce, good evening. And Councillor Foote coming through on that one, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alan, for your question. I'm pleased to say that the draft playing pitch strategy is on track to be completed in early August 2025. Subject to approval through the Council's governance procedures, the draft strategy will proceed to a period of public consultation during which residents' views will be sought to inform the final version. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Anthony. It's good to hear. Thank you. Yes, I do, please. Now that the new local plan has been issued, how will the pitch playing strategy be managed, updated to reflect the increased demand that massive new housing schemes will bring?
Thank you for your supplementary question. I think we would have to wait, first of all, until the playing pitch strategy review is published, the refresh is published. And obviously, as we go forward, that will inform the answer to your question. At the moment, I can't give that because it's speculative at this stage. Thank you.
Answer.
I think it's good supplementary, and I think we need to keep our eye on it because the demand will rise. And yet, you know, there's a lot to catch up. We've needed new pitches for quite some time. But I you know, you'll get us thinking about that. Thank you. Mr. Goatley, good evening. Yours to Councillor Gawley.
Thanks, Mr. Goatley, for your question. Pedestrianisation is known to have a positive impact on the local economy, primarily by increasing footfall and consumer spending. There is plenty of overarching evidence that suggests a net benefit for businesses and the overall vitality of an area. The council will, of course, measure and compare footfall and vehicular traffic flows around the town centre as part of this trial. We will also have access to other key economic data such as dwell time. And dwell time is the amount of time shoppers spend in the town centre, and increased dwell time is a direct correlation to increased spending. Early analysis of these metrics, comparing current trends with the same time last year, shows positive improvement. Newbury Town Centre footfall rose plus 2.1% year on year, exceeding the UK average of 1.8%. Northbrook Street saw a 12.55% increase, while Marketplace jumped 35%, with the highest rise in Newbury. Dwell time is also 10% up, and there's been a notable rise in tourists and workers visiting the area. We will also continue to work with the Newbury Business Improvement District to encourage businesses taking advantage of these extended pedestrianisation hours, and I will use this to shamelessly plug their events both this evening, where we are encouraging extended trading hours and supporting the late night shopping initiative, which is shop till 1900 and dine till late. And both of these are taking place this evening, so if you want to pop out for some shopping, you've still got time. And the second one will take place on the 7th of August. And I hope that answers your questions, but we will continue to monitor this throughout the trial. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, do. Thank you for that.
Might nip out for a meal afterwards, but no time for shopping. So you didn't really quite answer whether any modelling was done beforehand. But what I'm wondering is that since there's a lot of negative press, we've had people on the television, restaurateurs saying their business is going down. If it turns out to be a disaster, will you actually consider the obvious, which is to reduce pedestrianisation?
Hold on. I said here at the annual general meeting, I said if it is palpably not working, then we'll stop the trial. How many times do you have to say it? Councillor Gorley.
In terms of reducing it, do you mean back to 5 o'clock or reducing it completely? Because if the answer is reducing it overall back beyond the original 5, then no. I think we've demonstrated this evening that there is positive signs. It is early days. I'm not going to say we've fixed it. It's work. It's delivering everything we need. It's only been a month. But I think those numbers that we demonstrate this evening are positive, and we're really looking forward to continuing to work with the bid and businesses to make this a success for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Gogan.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Allen, next up again to Councillor Gorley.
So I'm back-to-back questions, need a drink. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for your question. We understand the changes to the waste collection services can be concerning, and we appreciate the feedback received for the recent survey and consultation. However, there's a slight clarification to the question on the wall there. 70% of respondents expressed they didn't believe a change to free weekly black bin collections would increase recycling and reduce waste production. However, this is proven again through other local authorities that have made this change. These things are absolutely delivered by making this change. 52% of residents indicated that they could make this change with support. The decision to move to a free weekly schedule was made following careful consideration of environmental, financial and operational factors, and the council must balance the resident feedback with its responsibility to deliver sustainable services. In advance of this change, to help support it, we've already made changes, and that's expanding our recycling services, such as including curbside recycling of pots, tubs and trays, collection of household batteries on black bin days, and recycling of coffee pods and vapes at our recycling centres, as well as expanding the number of small electrical items and carton banks across the district. I would also use this opportunity to highlight that analysis still shows that 42% of waste currently placed in back bins could be recycled using an existing curbside service. Evidence from other councils shows that moving to free weekly collections do lead to higher recycling rates and less overall waste. I think I would just add that we recognise the change can be challenging, and we're here to offer support. So if you've got concerns, please do get in touch. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, yes. Given that West Berkshire is in, according to some statistics, the top 20 waste producing counties in the country, and is the council 100% sure that this change will in fact bring the waste down, bring the county down percentage-wise?
Yes, like I said, there's evidence from other local authorities around the country that have made this change, that this is demonstrably the case. I think it's really critical to highlight, and I know residents will have concerns because we do produce a lot of waste as a local authority around that capacity. Reducing to free weekly still leaves us in line with our neighbouring Berkshire authorities in terms of weekly capacity provided, as well as still above Labour-led Reading Council. Even at fortnightly, they offer less capacity and they don't even collect glass at the curbside. So I'm confident that this can be made a success and will deliver on those metrics over time.
Thank you.
I think you said something, sir, about given we're in the top 20% for waste. Could you clarify?
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, we're in the top 25% for, let me get this right, kiloage produced per person, which is over 400 odd kilos. And there's a big challenge of that coming down the line if the Labour government introduced the emissions trading scheme, whereby that effectively is a landfill tax but on energy for waste. That could cost us a risk of £1.5 million a year. So it's really important that we drive down that overall household waste produced.
And another reason for why we're introducing this.
Absolutely, future protection as
Yeah,
well.
future protection.
As
for
well as being good for the
people
environment.
And future protection of money for residents.
Point of order, Leader.
Councillor, good evening. Lovely to see you, sir.
You too, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Gurley may have inadvertently misled Mr. Allen. He said that 52% of respondents said they would be able to cope with the change with support. That includes people who said that they may be able to cope with the change with support, which is not the same thing. I wonder if you'd like to clarify that.
Yes, the answer to the question is yes, with some support, is what the consultation question says with regards to that.
Lovely. Thank you. I've got Mr. Morgan next up to Councillor Pemberton.
Yes, Mr. Morgan, good evening and thank you for your question. Central government will replace the current two-tier system of local government, which consists of district and county councils with new unitary authorities. It also wants smaller existing unitary councils, like West Berkshire Council, to reorganise so that they cover areas of around 500,000 people. At present, West Berkshire Council provides services to just over 163,000 residents. The government wishes for councils to work together on plans for how these new unitary councils will work. As a result, the majority of the Oxfordshire authorities have teamed up with West Berkshire Council to work together positively and constructively on a proposal that meets the government's criteria and that we feel may also provide an option for a better future for both Oxfordshire and West Berkshire. The proposal, which is one of 3 being put forward for the area, is for 2 unitary councils with the working titles of Ridgeway Council, covering ourselves, and the Oxfords and Shires Council. It is a proposal at this stage that we consider would better deliver services whilst retaining a close link to local communities, and it aims to create a strong, financially stable council that will provide high quality, cost effective and locally driven services. Many of the towns and villages in the southernmost areas of Oxfordshire were once a part of Berkshire before the last big local government reorganisation of areas in the 1970s. And the proposed Ridgeway area would comprise of smaller scale towns and rural service centres and would not, for example, be dominated by larger towns such as Reading, Wokingham or Bracknell. So it kind of feels like there aren't many other options to consider. And what we are extremely keen to avoid is a situation where we end up being asked to do something or being told to do something by central government, which isn't in our residents' interest. And that is the driving factor behind West Berkshire Council being proactive in joining the proposals that are being put forward by Oxfordshire. But we do want to capture people's thoughts, and they will, of course, come out in the consultation which runs until the 16th of July. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. A lot of what you said there is common knowledge, so thank you for repeating that. My question really is, it's a fait accompli. You've mentioned 2 unitary councils, one Oxford and Shires, another Ridgeway. Oxford and Shires got nothing to do with us in West Berkshire, so we've only got one option that we're looking at. So that's the point I'm trying to get across. It does appear to me that this is being driven by self-interest and political considerations rather than looking at other options. For example, right, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but example, do we have a look at merging with maybe someone in Swindon, which is to the west, someone to the east in Reading, or even someone in Hampshire, for example? Did we not look at those options? And why, if we didn't, why didn't we?
Okay, I've got it. Did we not look at those options? You gave a couple of examples. We're going to take your supplementary at that point. I'm going to ask Councillor Pemberton, but you have to understand Hampshire are done. In the first wave, Hampshire are done. Over to you, Councillor Pemberton.
At the risk of sort of going back over the answer to my initial response, Mr. Morgan, the main driver behind the Ridgeway Council is that it ticks a lot of central government's criteria in terms of the proposed population, in terms of the size of the communities that council will cover. And this is nothing to do with political considerations. It's a question of looking at who our closest neighbours are and trying to find a solution that serves our residents and our businesses and other stakeholders as well. I mean, it's worth pointing out that Swindon isn't exactly next door to us. There's a fair distance between us.
Which is next door to us?
No, Swindon isn't.
I'm talking about Wiltshire, for example, Wiltshire.
Yeah.
that's in
Hold on,
Wiltshire.
hold on. We're picking this, your points up, sir.
Swindon isn't. Swindon isn't next door to us, and the considerations and the things that we're looking at, I've sort of addressed in my response to the initial question. But I don't think anybody can accuse us of not asking for residents' opinions or consulting, because there's.
I'm going to clarify. Let me clarify.
This is very frustrating, Councillor.
Well, I'm sure. But here we go. Swindon, there might be a sliver. No, this is not. I talk, you talk. Let me just say something here, please. There's a sliver of land. It might be half a mile. It might be a bit longer. I haven't measured it with Swindon. Frankly, they are a unitary council now. They do not have to change. Right? That's right. Hampshire are already done in the first tranche. We have taken to market, if you like, a solution which we believe would help our residents, this area, and be the right solution. This council has the right to take that to market and say, we think this is a good outcome. What's not to like?
Okay,
where are you heading, Mr. Moore?
My question is, and I think you've answered it, you have not looked at any other alternatives.
Yes, we have. You are not true.
Where are they then? What have you looked at? Why haven't you given us?
I'll tell you what the alternatives are, because I've just explained. Swindon are a unitary authority. Swindon are a unitary authority. They don't need to do anything. Hampshire are already done and dusted. It's being sorted out by government now. Two options remained.
Okay.
One was Ridgeway and one was no change whatsoever.
So it is a fait
accompli. Couldn't be more clear than that.
So it is a fait accompli.
No, it isn't a fait accompli, because A, we're consulting and we will get the response from residents to see how they like this idea. Government will ultimately respond to the bid we put in November. Where's the fait accompli? We're done. We're moving on. Next question, please. Mr. Goatley. Councillor Gawley.
Yes, thank you for your question, Mr. Goatley. The council has a contract with Volker Highways to maintain our highways network. The contract was tendered and won by Volker Highways in a highly competitive market, and the contract contains set costs to undertake specific tasks. How Volker resource those tasks is down to them as a responsible and experienced national contractor. Given your question is aimed at Volker's management of the site, I asked them for a comment and received the following statement. In order to ensure a safe service, it is necessary that each site is sufficiently resourced to prevent incidents occurring. We recognise that at times it can be perceived that the site is over-resourced, but on a site like London Road, with multiple access points along its length, it is important to make sure that the site is as safe as possible, with the least disruption to residents, businesses and the travelling public while we carry out these essential works. The resource engaged on site is there to ensure the vehicular traffic does not incorrectly enter the working space, and pedestrians also have a safe way through the works. And it's also really important to highlight that I was at the Road Traffic Safety Partnership with the PCC, the Police Crime Commissioner, a couple of weeks ago, and actually vehicular ingress into roadworks has seen a significant rise now. So it is really important that our contractors and our supply partners protect their employees and the members of the public. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you for that answer. Unfortunately, I think you've given the answer that Volkers would have expected, but there's loads of times when I've seen them, in fact, every time when I've seen them, it just seems so overmanned. It looks like you're just giving them a blank check for work. So,
well, that's the question I think you just said.
I'll reiterate the point, because you said it. We pay a flat fee for these services based on specific tasks. Highways work is a very specific task that we employ them for. And quite frankly, I would hope that a worker returning home at the end of the shift, is as important. And ultimately, that's priceless. I'm not a highways engineer, but I do work in infrastructure, and I do know that safety is the #1 priority when working out on site. So it is absolutely critical to ensure that. Volker are the experts, so I'm going to bow to their judgment on this one, but it isn't a blank check. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
And Mr Morgan again, I think, is it the final one up? Am I right? Am I wrong? Yes, Mr Morgan to Miss Councillor Cottingham.
Good evening, Mr Morgan. Thank you very much for your question. During the 24-25 financial year, the council borrowed 45 million from the Public Works Loan Board. Exceptional financial support is not additional to this sum. For 25-26, the council expects to borrow approximately 95 million pounds. This will not necessarily be from the Public Works Loan Board, as the Treasury team assesses the most cost-effective form of borrowing as and when borrowing is required. The sources of funding, which are approved sources, are detailed in the Council's annual investment and borrowing strategy, which is approved by the Council and published as part of the annual budget papers. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr Morgan?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You mentioned you borrowed 45 million pounds. Did it say 45 million pounds, did you say?
I did.
Okay. Before I get to, I listened to the scrutiny committee on Tuesday, and it's very informative actually. So again, thank you for that. So I now understand, I think everyone else should understand, that the EFS is not a loan. Basically, it allows you as the council to actually use what you have for capital into revenue. So it took a long time to get there, but I did understand on Tuesday. So thank you for that, right? So 45 million is not what you borrowed from the PW, but I've got records from the PW themselves from their website that says you borrowed 70 million pounds. I've got a breakdown here of that. So that figure you've got is incorrect. I've got it here, and it's from the Public Works Loan Board. I've got it in front of me. I can share that with you. Yeah. So it's 70 million pounds that you've borrowed, and the interest rates on that's about 4 million pounds. So,
I'm going to ask,
so I haven't got
I agree, and I'll let you come back, but you're not going to make a statement, that's what we borrowed, until I've got some clarification on it. And don't forget, we're talking about the 24-25
yes.
period. So I'm looking at Councillor Collins, I'm looking at Shannon Common-Slaughter, who didn't recognise that figure, I noticed. So until it's recognised by us, I ain't having you say it's true. Councillor or Shannon?
Thank you. It's not a figure I recognise. I would have to have a look at that paperwork. If you wish to submit it, I will have a look at it. My understanding is we borrowed 45 million and then we had additional sums from local authority borrowing. So we did do a combination. I recognise the sum as in what was borrowed, but not necessarily from the PWLB. So if you'd like to submit that, I will have a look.
I will do. This is directly from the PWLB.
Okay, you carry on with your supplementary now, please.
All right. So my supplementary is, and it's there, I will leave it for you at the end of this report, yeah. And again, it's a concern that we're looking at different figures here because that 70 million creates a huge amount of interest at short term. My supplementary question is, and again goes back to the scrutiny committee, and I think you, Councillor Cottam, you said you only borrow stuff that you actually pay for. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah. So my question is, out the 70 million that you borrowed.
No, 45 is the figure we recognise as we sit here, please.
Okay, out of the 45 or 70 that you borrowed, how much of that is left? Have you got any of it left, and where and how's that been used? That's my supplementary question.
Thank you for your supplementary question. So part of our governance strategy with regarding treasury management, we have a minimum of roughly 10 million pounds on, I suppose, for working capital cover. As part of our strategy. So what any moment in time, we'll have a minimum balance of 10 million to help us, you know, almost like a rainy day fund. So we will not be borrowing money for the sake of it, but just putting on deposit, because obviously the money which we receive will be less interest rate than the interest rate which we pay.
I understand that. So
okay.
Well, I still don't know how much you've got left. 10 million, is it?
No. Thank you. Now, look, you ask these questions in public. Because I think you feel they have a public interest.
Absolutely.
Fine, but you can also ask points of clarification directly to us. You know you can do that as well. So I think we've done as well as we can in 31 minutes.
Fair enough.
Okay.
A minute over.
We're done.
Apologise, Yvonne.
No, don't be silly. But don't underestimate or overlook the fact you can go directly to us outside of this public area.
I understand, but I congratulate Councillor Gordon on this. I'm looking for transparency. That's all, Councillor Brooks.
We're doing our
And
best.
I'm
We're
trying to
doing
get
our
there.
very level
This is
best
really important.
within the
So it's-
confines of some commercial
So I think we've had some good
confidentiality.
examples of transparency and not so good tonight. So that's what I'm saying. So
I'm
thank you
sorry.
for those
I'm
who-
sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to move on with business.
Thank you.
Item 6 then.
Sorry, Leader. Got a quick point of clarification. The Leader of the Opposition has just shared an email with members of the exec and shadow executive saying that I gave a misleading response, and I just want to take the opportunity to correct that again, if that's okay. So your point of clarification, Councillor McKinnon, was with regards to me saying, sorry, your question was that I said maybe with some support. In my response to your point of clarification.
No, that's not true, Councillor Gurley. You said yes.
No, hold on a second.
Well, this is also wrong.
Let me finish.
Just get the details correct.
No, I did, because what I said is yes with support.
Yes.
I did say that. And that's what the graph says. And I said that in my point of clarification to you originally.
You just said maybe with some support.
No, I didn't. Absolutely did not.
It's going to be a long evening, isn't it? If you're not prepared to defer to the chair. I'm trying to manage a meeting here. Help me do so, please. Councillor Gordon.
Can I just finish? Yes. So in my response, I did say yes, because I read it off of the same graph. So I know what I said. But your question originally was maybe with some support, and that wasn't the option. However, I'm happy to explain the options that were included in the 52% for absolute transparency. And that included yes, if I could recycle more, yes with some support, and maybe, although it may be a challenge at certain times of the year.
That's the one.
But that wasn't the question you originally asked, and that wasn't the one that I answered.
I'm going to move on. No, sorry.
Well, thank you.
Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you for the
With all the
clarification.
respect I
Councillor
must
Brooks.
give you as Leader of the Opposition, let me move on, please.
I'll come back to this.
So we're into the capital financing report out term financial year 24-25. Am I not? Aha. I'm rushing my fences. Are there any petitions, Mr. Chiverton?
None received, Leader.
Thank you, but thank you, Nicky Thomas, for following me up about that. Slap on my wrist. Capital finance report out term financial year. Councillor Cottingham introducing, and are we noting that we need a proposer for this? Are you proposing, sir?
I am proposing if
Thank
that is
you.
required.
Having a second from this desk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we had quite a detailed discussion on this report earlier on this week on Tuesday. I will bring out some of the highlights of the actual report which we discussed. I will start with the same way which I did on Tuesday, is if we go to the last page of the report, which shows the liability benchmark graph. I know it's quite a complicated chart to understand, and probably even more complicated to explain, especially to, as I say, residents. So what this does in essence, it shows how much we need to borrow to fund, I suppose, the day-to-day activity of West Berkshire Council. So what I mean by day-to-day is we've talked earlier about revenue accounting, we've talked about capital expenditure, but also I think we're well aware of the DSG, the high needs block. So this is where we have the statutory override, which the government has just recently kicked the can down another year to 27-28. And we will discuss later on this evening regarding the actual increased pressure which we face just to service the debt. But from a raising of finance and capital expenditure, what we can within our own limits, the news is that, come 28-29, all of our capital which we will be borrowing will be funding the high needs block. So without radical reform from central government, we will be in a situation whereby capital which we're borrowing won't be it will be basically funding one aspect, which is the off-balance sheet with regard to the high needs block. So going back to the start of the report, on the first page, we have the provisional outturn of spend was 41.1 million, which was 18.1 million below, of which is being reprofiled. I have asked for that detail to be expanded as we discussed on Tuesday, so I'm just waiting for that to come through. So I will be sharing that with all of the members, both for ourselves and the opposition. And similarly, you have the reprofiling into 25, 26, again, with a lot more transparency, and had various questions over why various programmes have been rolled over. I don't have those full answers yet this evening, but once I have those written responses from the relevant officer, I'll share that with everyone as well. So, as I say, it was, as I say, we had quite a robust discussion over the detail within the report. So there's one or two things which, as I say, I fired off emails to the relevant officers yesterday morning. So I'm just waiting for those responses back. I apologise if I haven't got the full responses yet back, but as soon as I do have those back, I will relay them to everyone and also give everyone the transparency of the various projects which we've had to roll over and the reasons for that rollover, those slippage. From a borrowing perspective, we've talked earlier about the Public Works Loan Board. The average weighted average cost of borrowing for West Berkshire Council is 3.94%. At the moment, the Public Works Loan Board rate is roughly 5.7%. The plan is, as soon as interest rates start to fall, we will get into long-term borrowing. We do have our own governance that short-term borrowing can't be more than 30% of total borrowing. And as I say, we will not exceed that. So we'll go into the market if we are getting close to exceeding 30% being short-term borrowing. And as I say, we will be looking to move into long-term borrowing once interest rates are getting closer to that weighted average of roughly 4%. So I think that probably covers everything off within the reporter's main highlights.
I'll pick up a couple of things and you might want to add later. I think the high needs block needs proper explanation so that members of the public can fully understand it. And I spoke to Shannon earlier this week and I wanted the basic guide to the special educational needs demand. If we are suddenly spending £6, £7, £8 million a year, what are we spending it on? I'd like a breakdown of that. It's clearly services we are purchasing to help children who need special education. It could be extra teaching assistance. It could be special education needs schools that are springing up. And you'll understand it, Councillor Boak, but not every householder will. And I think they should have the opportunity to do so. Because the implication of what you said is in 3 years' time, the only money we could spend on our infrastructure will be from SIL and other government grants because we couldn't borrow money. We were leveraged up to the hilt, just trying to manage that high needs block. The carried forward from year 23-24 was £12.3 million on the table on page 21. So already we were carrying forward stuff from a previous year. Now we're carrying forward 12.4 million. Shannon, I'm putting you on the spot, and if you can't answer it now, answer it another time. How much did we carry forward in 22-23? There's a trend in not delivering what we hope to do in year. And I draw attention to it was something the Conservative administrations wrestled with and struggled with as well. And here we are doing the same. And I'm determined to get that gap down. So we are not simply failing to deliver the key capital programme and simply rolling it forward. You'll always fail some projects. Some projects would always overrun. Some projects can't get started for legal reasons. I get all that. But when 30% of a capital programme is not delivered, then it looks a bit like a wish list. It's another reason why I've asked Councillor Tom McCann to take a look at the built environment, the bricks and mortar, and see how we drive that with pace. So we're doing something about it. Has that given you long enough to think, Shannon? Because I mean, I gave you 90 seconds there, I can say.
Much appreciated. I will bring those figures back.
Yes, please, because if you look at that pattern over 5, 6, 7 years, it may even be that as a percentage, it's nudging down a bit, but it needs to do more than nudge. So thank you. I don't know if you got anything to add. I was keen to put some perspective on it, particularly, Councillor Cottingham, the high needs block. I'll press on. Any other comments? I know they're waiting. Any other comments from the executive side at this stage? Councillor Bowick indicated first.
Thank you, Leader. And I'm doing my best not to make a political point here. Yes, we did have underspends towards the end of our term. I just make a point for clarification or for understanding that we understood very well the challenges of delivering the projects that we were responsible, that we were aiming to deliver during the COVID period, and that was we were given excuses by our contractors and so on and so forth. So my point is, I guess, that if we're comparing achievement over a period of time, we need to go back quite a long time before.
And we will, because I'm nodding in agreement with you that COVID just threw everything up in the air.
Yeah.
But I'd like to go back over 10, 12 years because I just think it's an established trend. And, you know, I'm myself and the executive are saying it's not good enough and we need to improve it. So I say holding our hand up, I'm saying I'm determined to improve this. I don't think we'll ever get more than 80%, 85%, but we should be achieving that regularly. Councillor Somner.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm just following on from that. Obviously, at that point, I was looking after items such as highways, which through COVID, especially, and I hate to still be using that word this far down the line, but through COVID, it wasn't just an issue with personnel. It was actually for highways, it was an issue with being able to get hold of the things they needed to do the work. And the same with building, it became difficult to get hold of bricks. Now, I think the question that needs to go to those services is, are they, in all honesty, still feeling the impact of that this far down the line? From an NHS point of view, I can talk to that and say that actually, yes, I think we still are, because actually, from an NHS point of view, they still reflect on 2019-20 as being the point of baseline. And that, to me, is a concern. So I suspect that is probably the answer that will come back. Of course, the follow-up question to that is, well, how long do you think it will continue?
I'll take that first. You do your follow-up in a moment. My own recollection is prior 2019-20, we still had quite a bit of slippage. I don't think this is a new phenomenon, but let's look at what the figures tell us. But you had another point.
Yeah, just other points that were raised the other night, and forgive me if you did cover this. Your presentation obviously was adapted from Tuesday night, and understandably so. A couple of things. One was purely around the actual presentation of things like the graph in 4.1, where we've got text over type in text, which if we could have those sort of things resolved for presentations going forward, it's a minor thing. But if we're putting this out to the public, and we rightly expect public to be looking at this information, we need to make sure they can read it. Other projects was one of my issues the other night, because other projects in the list and table at 5.5 actually, although it's other projects to the value up to 250,000, as a cumulative figure became the biggest line in the chart at 7.26 million. So, and thank you, Councillor Cottingham, you've agreed to take that forward to find the detail and to come back to us on that. I think it's important to recognise that projects can be broken down, and I'm not suggesting they are, but projects can be broken down and are broken down over years, different points of the year to deliver, and that means that actually financially you can spread a lot of things over a long period. Doesn't make it any less of a project when you bring all those numbers back together again. So we do need to be transparent, and I'm sure you will be with that information. And the final point really was on that final graph, and my issue there was that crossover date that Councillor Cottingham quite rightly has highlighted as being a concern. my bolt onto that is how do we then address it when we move forward with the likes of Ridgeway Council, and when do those conversations start? Because I think we would be fearful of leaving those conversations too late, and potentially understanding what other authorities, the other two authorities, are doing and how they operate, and where it might either create risk or create a solution, is important to know as early as we possibly can.
Well, you know, I'll say again, Ridgeway is not a slam dunk. And we have to balance how much we invest in our time in anticipating it perhaps coming into being, promoting it, because we are. And if it does not find favour with the government, the other main plan, proposition, apart from the Shires and Oxford and Shires to the north, is a single unitary Oxford councils, nearly 800,000 people. That may find favour, and that means we are in a holding pattern. And we are trying to find a balance between carrying on doing things here and saying we won't do them because of Ridgeway. That's a tricky one. But I do want to make sure people don't think Ridgeway is a done deal and all we're doing is getting ready for it. It's not true.
No, absolutely take that point, and that wasn't the reason for the question, but we've got it as a solution, a potential solution on the table. And my concern is if we leave it till 2027 to be having those conversations, then it is too late. So as things progress, I think it needs to be at the forefront of people's minds that we need to be prepared, as prepared as we can be to have those conversations.
It's in our mind. The other thing I will say is not particularly technical, but we are getting close to some serious centralisation of project management, a much stronger project management office. And what does that mean to the people, to our residents? It means we're not going to be silo-based. That capital programme will have a lens on it through the project management office, the PMO, which is very, very normal now in big organisations. But here over time, we went disparate with it, and we didn't get those economies in the centre, that resilience in the centre, that shared learning in the centre that we're going to have quite soon through a new invigorated PMO. So plug in for that to answer your question, Richard, Councillor Somner, that things are going on to address this. Councillor Wollaston, next up.
Firstly, I just welcome that expansion of project management. It's well overdue. Thank you. Councillor Cottingham will know my concerns over the borrowing.
Yep.
I've looked at the figures now. I can see where the 45 million has come from. It's in the single year. As I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, £10 million should have been repaid. That's 70 million in total. You've got 35 million to be repaid in the rest of this year, and £20 million next year. And I'm still concerned: A, how are you going to repay it? And B, what's the interest that's been charged on it? Because I suspect it's not the average 3.5%, it's 5.5%, 5.75%.
So just before I answer your question, Councillor Wollaston, to Councillor Solomon, the first thing I did on yesterday morning was to send out a list of questions.
Thank you for sharing.
Answers. So, so typically what we do regarding short-term borrowing to pay off debt which matures, we have obviously that revolving door. Stuff will come into the Treasury Management team. They'll know when it needs to be repaid, and we will then go to the market and then reborrow again. So it's almost like refinancing. So in essence, it's like a credit card. The fact that, and you quite rightly say, the credit card debt which we're now paying, the interest rate is going to be higher than what we potentially borrowed when it initially comes to mature, when we initially borrowed it. All depends on those maturity dates. And as I say, at the moment, we are within our borrowing criteria, our own rules. But as we've indicated earlier this evening, come 2-3 years' time, the pressure will be even greater because we're having to borrow to service the actual high needs block, which is off our balance sheet. So we don't get to spend the money. Obviously, the schools do with regard to high needs, but we have to actually service that debt, MRP and interest, which comes out of the revenue accounts. And you're quite rightly to highlight that the actual gearing, the borrowing which we have as a council, will it come to a stage where it becomes so much of a pressure for us, which then puts greater pressure onto the revenue accounts.
If you'll forgive me, Leader, because I think I'm being helpful here. If my understanding is right, about the total debt that you've got, you've seen these borrowings, the loan board, is actually probably more like a third of what's being shown in total, because effectively you're just turning it over. Thank you.
Okay, so before I bring in the Leader of the Opposition, I've read today, and I think the Bank of England may have given a heads up on this, or commentators, that because the government have made a complete horlicks of the bill that was going through this week, complete mess of it, the likelihood is taxes will have to rise, but interest rates, the bank will actually drive them down more than they felt they needed to. And we're hearing it could be 3.5% by the new year, purely to make up for the complete inefficiency, or even worse than that, inability to get things right by Her Majesty's government at the moment, which that overall it doesn't help us, but it does potentially mean interest rates will have to go down faster. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. I think you meant to say His Majesty's government. It's a hard habit to get out of their leader, isn't it? I think you did.
Words 70. I had 70 years of it. Oh my word!
And do you know what? After you've just said that for 2 minutes, we're in entire agreement about that. You won't be surprised. My question on this is one of prioritisation. So I think one of the capital projects that this administration appears to be rather proud of is the spending of over £500,000, and I think counting, on a grass football pitch at Faraday Road, which can be used twice a week. Now, we can have a discussion about whether that represents value for money, but I wonder what residents might feel when that project, the Liberal Democrat administration appears to be happy to sing from the rafters about, and I know Councillor Foote is delighted with the result, when we see a project being slipped about mental health and autism provision for just a couple of £100,000, which I think is affecting some of those vulnerable people in the district. My question really, Councillor Cottingham, is why would you have prioritised a project like Faraday Road over such a worthy project like that?
I don't think you're comparing apples with apples, but I'm going to get an answer on the mental health project. The other thing to bear in mind, Councillor McKinnon, the Faraday Road project is an evolving project, is a stage project. It's phase by phase. The first phase was get football back on grass. I expect to see plans for a 3G pitch to be coming forward within a couple of months. This was not an end in itself when grass played football came back. But I don't think it won't be an absolute fair comparison, because your implication is we put a lot of more priority into Faraday Road than we did into the mental health project. That would never have been the case. But I'm wondering who wants to pick up on it. Well, Councillor, I'm talking about the mental health project, and if you feel you can answer that, then I'll bring you in. But if you don't, I'm looking for somebody else to talk about the mental health project. Councillor Clark, I'm going to defer to. I'll bring you back in afterwards. Councillor Foote.
Yeah, I think this would be something Councillor Codling would pick up because it's children's.
Well, I've got Anne-Marie Dodds in tonight, and I made her aware that she might get 1 or 2 googlies. This is the first one.
Special treat, Councillor, thank you. There are a number of mental health projects that are ongoing, all of which are looking at additional places, and they do relate to the overspend on the high needs block. So I'd want to understand which project in particular we're referring to. So I'm happy to come back with the detailed answer if Councillor's happy.
Yes, I think you're going to need to do that. Councillor Foote, did you have anything to add before? I can see that the Leader of the Opposition is looking to come back in a moment. Councillor Foote.
Yes, thanks very much, Leader. Yeah, the only point I would like to stress is that, as we all know, and it's really very common public knowledge now, that sport provision taking part in physical activity has a massive benefit for people's mental health and well-being, particularly for our younger people. And we've referenced COVID and the hard time a lot of our young people had during that COVID period. Getting them back playing team sports is a really helpful way of improving their mental health and physical health as well, of course, and keeping them healthy, hopefully for the rest of their lives. So I think that forms a big part of what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Very relevant. Thank you.
Yeah, I do actually. Thank you for that, Councillor Foot. I could not agree more. But at Faraday Road, we were talking about a grass pitch which can be used twice a week.
As you keep saying,
Twice
sir.
a week. So there's only 11 people on a football team, and we know that Newbury FC have first dibs on this. So please don't sit there and try and tell me that Faraday Road is of a massive benefit to the wider West Berkshire community, because that is simply not true.
Okay, so thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yes, I did, Leader. I like Councillor McKinnon. I don't doubt that football pitches bring great benefit to our communities, to mental health of young people. But Councillor McKinnon is talking about people who have really serious needs, which are not going to be fixed by running around in a football pitch. So let's not mix them up.
Okay, so we spent a fair bit of time on this and we've got quite a long agenda to go. It's clever, it's interesting, I was going to say it's clever, it's interesting how you weave the football pitch into the capital programme debate. And we know how much you hate it, but on Saturdays when they're playing football down there, there's a lot of joyous people. But nevertheless, you keep telling us how terrible it is. I'm not sure the football supporting community of Newbury are necessarily agreeing with you. You crack on. I think we're done. Oh, Councillor Stewart.
Sorry, it's just
I'm going to start to look for questions as much as debate here, I think.
I've got a question about something completely different, but it is in the paper. So on page 17, 2.2, the point begins, members are asked to approve, and the first bullet says 408,000 of additional council funding relating to social care case management system, increasing the budget provision from 960,000 as part of the capital programme to 1.37 million. The increase is required to fund additional technical consultancy support for implementation. So this might be a question to either Councillor Clark or Paul Coe. I know very bitterly that the system that we currently have became a money pit. And this seems a very early stage to have a situation where we've had to increase budget. So how can we have assurances that this is not going to continue and that more and more increases in budget will have to
Thank you very much. And as politicians do, that's very courageous to start talking about all the overspends on care director going from 5 to 6 under your administration. Very courageous of you to talk about that. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I do have an answer to the question which I raised on Wednesday morning. So the extra 410k external consultancy, I asked how many man days. This equates to 796 man days. The engagement of 2 external specialists as a minimum, and there is a business case below this which details what we will be spending the money on. And you're quite right to say, is this just a blank check? And it has to be properly tracked, making sure we're getting value for money. And if we look at the papers, next paper on the revenue side, there's a pressure which we've incurred in the last financial year because of a project which was, how do you put it, wasn't best practice delivered. It was done on its own, which caused a lack of a reconciliation between 2 systems and nearly a 700k pressure. We're well aware of making sure we're doing this properly, correctly. Our previous experiences with Care Director is a good illustration. Sometimes you do things on the cheap, it's false economy. You do have to make sure you are paying the right price. And you'll have our word that we will keep a very tight eye on the keen eye on this, make sure that the budget doesn't blow from 1.4 million to 2 million.
Yep. Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Sorry, Leader, point of order.
Sir?
You used the word hate. That's not a nice word.
It was figurative in terms, it wasn't hate, was it really?
Well,
And
that's the word you used.
I'll withdraw hate, although I didn't mean it I meant it more in a slang way. It said, I know how much you dislike it. So I'll withdraw the word hate. How about that? Okay, right, good. Revenue financial, I've got to now propose. We've got a proposal. We've got a seconder. All those in favour of the capital upturn report, thank you very much indeed. And then on to the revenue performance report, which is item 7, page 29 on the paperwork. And back to you, Councillor Cottingham.
Is this for information or am I needing this for information? So it doesn't need a seconder.
Yes, let's just check. Is it noted or it's noted? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
No need to propose. And bear in mind, although I'm sure there will be a debate on it, a discussion, some questions. This was rehearsed on Tuesday night, 2 nights ago, wasn't it?
It was, yes. So thank you very much, Chair. So going through the report from the start, and it's something which we spend a little time clarifying in 1.4 rather, what is EFS? So in essence, EFS is the capitalisation of revenue onto the balance sheet. So in essence, the money has already been spent. We've already either borrowed it or used internal sources of funding. It's not additional. All we're doing is we're moving 13 million from our revenue account onto the balance sheet, which typically is from an MRP perspective over 20 years. So if we're moving 10 million, for example, over 20 years, it means that each year we release from the balance sheet £500,000, which equates in layman's terms to that 20 million. So it's the deferring for later time to pay that money back from a revenue accounting perspective. So that's within 1.4. If we look at the overall overspend, which there's quite a lot of detail on the chart, which in the report, which is over 4.4, between 4.3 and 4.4. You see that the total spend for West Berkshire Council in 24-25 was 181.2 million, of which the budget was 164.6 million, i.e. we were 16.6 million pounds overspent. That does include the overspend for the DSG of 6.7 million. If you take into account our reserves brought forward to start the year, less the overspend, and then adding back the exceptional financial support of 13 million, we find ourselves with a general fund reserve of roughly 10.6 million. So in essence, the EFS is there to fund and top up our reserves, less the overall shortfall, which we have of roughly round about 3 million or so in last financial year. There's quite a lot of detail how and why we have overspent. I suppose the good news from a budgetary perspective is the fact that our adult social care was only 0.5% over. However, we have seen increased amount of pressure in children, home to school transport, increase in children needing to having educational healthcare plans, increase in children going to care. So we've seen unit costs increase from, say, £6,000 per week to £8,000 per week. So typically going from 3.6 million to 6.4 million. So we're seeing an increase in complexity and of need, and also awareness of parents of what is best for their own children as well. So, you know, they are quite rightly demanding what's best for their children, and we're having to then obviously satisfy those requirements and placing them in the best environments for their children. We did have a few questions over why there were increases in executive place, executive director resources. The executive director resources predominantly was the external audit fee, which I believe is just about doubled. And also we had a TVI invoice coming in, which is a transformation invoice. I don't have the exact details on the place, but I think it's to do with a. Sorry. Do you want to?
Through you, Chair. The amount referred to at scrutiny was not actually the place amount. I think there was a probably reading the wrong row. So actually place was slightly overspent, around £67,000.
If I could just clarify that.
Not yet, not yet.
The executive director is not.
Not yet.
I think you're both
getting a
right.
chance.
The overall spend was 67.8, but the line was executive director place, which is overspent by 158,000.
Correct.
So the actual mix is right, is right from a 67.9k overspend, but it's actually the executive line. I think, as I say, I'll go through my notes just to see what the answer is and come back. I don't have it to hand at this very second.
Take page 34. I'm looking at page 34. I'm seeing place overspent by £67,857 on a £35.5 million budget. I think it's a darn good performance. So I don't know why we're getting confused here.
No.
I'm then looking at resources with quite a significant overspend, way beyond the executive director piece. So let's focus a little bit on finance, property, and procurement. You can all see it on the table on page 34. You mentioned resources. Let's focus on resources for a moment, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Cottingham.
I will. Just a clarification, there was a particular question on the first line of executive director place, which is showing 158k increase. So going back to what I said earlier regarding a particular project which wasn't, I suppose in some ways, it wasn't fit for purpose. If you go to the right place, 4.14, within that you've got the analysis of why finance, property and procurement were overspent by 1.8 million. The majority of that relates to 4.15 is a housing benefit project, which I think was called is it
Arbitras.
Arbitras housing rent system, which was initially launched in 2020, which didn't integrate with Aggresso. So it was a system on its own, and the team who procured the system didn't really follow the procurement project management process. It didn't have the appropriate interface into Aggresso, so the reconciliation, which should have been automatically, as Councillor McKinnon knows, any balance sheet account should be reconciled. So there was a liability building up. So in essence, there was overpayments of housing benefit to what it should have been. Eventually, that reconciliation has been performed, and we have discovered that we've overpaid residents the tune of 650k of housing benefit. The chances of us recovering that are probably quite slim, because obviously from a affordability perspective, so we may well have to take the option to write it off.
Indeed, and this goes back several years. Let's make it clear for the avoidance of doubt. This goes back several years. It also plays to something I've been upset about, that systems have been purchased without going through IT scrutiny. This system was purchased in a high degree of isolation that I expect to have been put right. But I will tell you that one was going through the procurement board recently without having been through ICT. That needs putting right, so that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. So I think you probably done as much as you did Tuesday night. Let's open it up to some other comments, or have you got some closing remarks?
Want me to carry on or just want to?
No, you carry on.
Okay. So in addition, you've got very, very high agency fee costs in qualified accountants as well. So it is it's a market where the supplier, i.e. the qualified accountant, is naming their price. In essence, they're guns to hire. So there is a shortage of public service accountants.
Within the context, we've got agency worker costs down from 12 million to 7.5 million. It'll be on the performance report later.
But we're finding a pressure within our qualified finance accounting team. We did discuss the adverse variance income shortfall of 477k regarding putting the budget together in the February. The converse of that was that we didn't, at the time of putting the budget in, we did not put the capital receipt as a line item, which would then be offset against transformation. So on one hand, we lose 477k, but on the other hand, we actually gained more by offsetting that capital receipt against transformation. So there was a net benefit to the general reserve by selling that asset to, as I say, the balance which we had for 24-25, which is all within the transformation spend which we incurred in 24-25. So we have briefly touched on children's social care. It is an area which is increasing in cost, increasing in demand, increasing, as I said, in unit cost. We're doing lots of initiatives within the Children and Family Services area, not least having a business case for commissioning to making sure that we are getting best value and looking at the actual packages which we have provided to our children.
Grateful for that. I'll dwell a little bit, as I'm not seconding this item, it's a noted item, but let's just have a look, because in the past we look at the percentages of overspend, and if you look at that table on page 34, Mr. Coe, Councillor Clark, you've done well. You've done well. You do have a small overspend, but on a 69, nearly 70 million pound budget, you took an 850k forecast overspend down to 346,000. Well done, but you've got to keep doing it. You know, that's the challenge, because it's such a pressure for us. On place, I've already thanked you, Claire, and those with place like Councillor Gaines, Councillor Gawley, Councillor Pemberton to a degree during last year with public protection, Councillor McCann now. You're well within the margin there of error on 35.5 million. Resources, you've explained, thank you very much. And I've backed you up if you like, and lamented buying practices of software that frankly didn't do the job because it didn't integrate with our Aggresso system. I think we know that we're under a lot of pressure. And frankly, on page 34, people, children's services, we hope to spend 34.9 million. We spent over 46 million. Stands out. We don't begrudge that. There are pressing needs of children with special educational needs. And that demand is immense, coupled with the home to school transport demands as well. And that is not a criticism. I'm sorry, Anne-Marie Dodds, I've congratulated two other executive directors, and you, I'm not putting you on the spot per se, but you know that we appreciate what you're doing and understand the pressures you're under. I think I've just given a little bit of a summary there. Any other comments from the executive benches? As I look across, I see Councillor Somner first.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I would echo your praise to all officers that are doing the best they can under difficult circumstances.
They're portfolio holders, they're really doing their best as well.
I'm sure they're listening to their officers acutely, and rightly so. I want to go back to 4.18. Councillor Cottingham, you and I discussed it the other night. The 477,000 that was included in the budget and becomes a hit to that budget. Because I carried on thinking about this after our conversation. And whilst I accept your position of the overall benefit of that money coming in from the property sale, what I don't understand is why that budget line can't have been carried through and delivered from that money that was coming in, because I still think there's a massive mismatch on there, and there's a I don't want to say it's a glaring gap, but it's a glaring gap of what's expected by the services that are working so hard and rightly being praised, and then finding out a little bit that the rug's been pulled from beneath them. So there does seem to be, and unless you're going to tell me there's a technical reason why it can't be done, and I'm sure you probably will, a need to establish whether there are budget commitments from the income from those properties, and a need therefore to make sure that that money is fulfilled on the sale of any of those properties.
Right, not wishing to get into accounting speak. However, well, I will.
You know I have to look to my left when you do that, so it's fine.
So what typically happens, as Councillor McKinnon knows, is that the budget is a snapshot at one moment in time when you know what you know at the particular time. So what would normally happen in a commercial world, you'd reforecast through the Q1, and those numbers of the loss of the 477 plus getting back the capital receipt, say of £1 million, so you would be net up £500,000 would be in the Q1 reforecast. So the budget was done of the information which we knew to be fact when it was passed in February. We didn't have the option of having option A, no sale, i.e. 477 as being revenue, and option B, we sell, so we lose the 477. However, we get the capital receipt, which then we can use to offset against transformation. So if we get a capital receipt of 5 million and able to offset 2 million of it, we would be up by £1.5 million. And that is the problem which we face setting the budget. It's done February with the information which we know then.
And I accept the timelines, and you explained it very well again on Tuesday night during scrutiny. It just still feels to me that whilst we've got services that are desperately trying to find 5,000 here and 10,000 there, 477,000 is a big amount to see in a paper. That was a hit, unless you're telling me that service wasn't a hit.
It wouldn't be a service that's hit because as we discussed earlier, it's revenue, which is that balancing item. So what if the actual income which we receive from our commercial property isn't assigned to an individual project? That's not how it works.
Okay, I need to move on. We've been having at it for quite a while, and I know Councillor McKinnon wants to come in. Do I?
Yes,
Perhaps
thank you,
don't.
Leader.
Sorry.
Thank you, Leader. So, Councillor, I've got a few observations and some questions. Councillor Cotting was in the middle of explaining.
I'd rather have mostly questions rather than observations. We've been going at it 80 minutes now, and we've got a long lot to do.
This is a pretty important paper, would you not agree, Leader?
Then again, that wasn't a question either. Come on, let's move it along, please.
No, this is getting a bit ridiculous now. Does the administration welcome scrutiny or not?
Yes, absolutely. There was a question. Answered. Next question, please.
I think we'd rather not be so facetious here. These are important points I'm going to make.
Sorry. I sat through 18 years.
I'm not interested.
Of being slapped down.
I'm not interested.
And all I'm asking for is you to focus on the questions you wish to ask. Now, you will continue to make your comments because you're very astute and clever at doing that, but focus on the question, please.
We'd get through it a lot quicker if it wasn't interrupted, Leader.
And the last word. Well done. Carry on.
Again, we don't need that attitude, Leader, but I will continue. Leader, why did you cut Councillor Cottingham off when he was in the middle of answering a question that I'd given to him at scrutiny about a particular line in this page 34 table on Executive Director Place? Why did you do that?
I'm not answering that, but I'm going to bring him back because it seems that maybe he hadn't finished his answer.
I've got the answer hopefully somewhere in the depths of some emails, which I just
ask another one while he digs at the depths of his email. I think you've got some others.
Is that okay, Leader? I do. I'm referring now to paragraph 4.18, and it's about the loss of the income from commercial property. The paragraph 4.18 says at the end, property and investment boards are currently reviewing assets to determine which ones should be offered for sale and which should be retained for the valuable yield they contribute to the council's revenue budget. And there is a question coming here, Leader, so don't panic. And in paragraph 7.8, a balance must be struck between the lure of a one-off capital receipt, which could potentially fund some additional transformation spend, etc. All rental income sacrifice will need to be replaced with income generation or savings proposals to offset the lost income stream. So my question is, do those paragraphs not contradict the property investment strategy, which is to dispose of all properties by 2028?
What those two paragraphs are there to do is to show the risk, financial risk of disposing of the commercial property portfolio. So it's giving quantification that the fact that there will be additional pressure to the revenue budget. I have unsurprisingly mulled over what we discussed on Tuesday. At the moment, as I say, our policy is for disposal, and we've talked about this at length previously. And one of the things that strikes me is Councillor Williston and Councillor Brooks, part of the Property Investment Board, is the complexity of what we discuss. And what I mean by this is when we start to talk about geopolitical risk, when we start to talk about the bond markets, when we're talking about the fact that leases will be coming up for renewal, and the fact that we don't know what particular offer we will have to give our tenants regarding rent-free periods, renewing leases. We're talking about sinking fund. And at the moment, we're very fortunate that the rental income which we received, I think the bad debt is next to nothing. However, we have quite a diverse range within our portfolio. So we range from a petrol station up to...
Councillor Cottingham, I'm going to ask you to be brief. I might be told off here by the Leader of Opposition for cutting into you, but everybody needs to be brief in their answers. And so you're giving a very comprehensive answer, but I think you're almost there, if I may.
Just finish off. And at the moment, as I say, our policy is for asset disposal. However, that has not changed, but we may, part of the Department of Housing, Local Government, they may give an instruction, part of DFS, for asset sales to be ceased.
Thank you, Councillor Costigan, for that. Leader, can I ask, is there a time limit to this meeting that I'm not aware of? I think we can go to 10, can't we?
I'm managing the meeting. I'm hoping you're going to let me do it. I'm carrying on. I'm not going to get sidetracked by that sort of remark.
What,
Leader, no.
I have more
scrutiny
scrutiny to deliver.
Sir, you are now actually trying to chair the meeting. That's not going to happen. So I'm carrying on.
Fine.
We talk about the property investment portfolio a lot, don't we? And we keep it under review because, as you say, things are changing. It is still our intention to unwind it all. But, although we've said by about 2028, we're keeping that under review all the time. Howard knows this within Property Investment Board. You made some comments early on, a couple of years ago, saying you told people we're going to do it very quickly. We don't need to do it quickly, but we think we need to do it. And one of the big reasons for me is the sinking fund, or the lack of it, and the risk thereof of major dilapidations, major refurbishment, very significant indeed. So forgive us if we actually now start to tack in flight. Do you tack in flight? But frankly, we keep these things under review. Is that fair, Councillor Cottingham?
It is.
So Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. And I think I'm keeping a running total of how often you do jump in and bail out your
I'm
portfolio.
glad you
holders
do.
here.
I'm
No,
glad you keep
it's
a
of
running
great
total
interest
of the
to me.
chairman trying to help the meeting
Well,
along.
the chairman or the main
carry
player,
on. You
the
carry
star
on.
player. So again, very specific question here, Councillor Cottingham. Are you considering retaining any property assets for the valuable yield they contribute to the council's revenue budget?
Not currently.
Then is 4.18 not wrong then, the last sentence?
4.18 is something that we are keeping under review. Next question.
But Councillor Cottingham, did you say that none are being considered for retention?
At this, it is not 2028 yet, is it? As I last
Okay, so it's
next
current.
question.
Yep, no problem. Does currently mean at this stage? The Property Investment Board are currently, I would say at this stage, reviewing assets to determine which should be offered for sale and which should be retained. I would just like some clarity. Is it just a case that you guys did not read the paper before signing
I
off?
beg your pardon. Now,
because
being
we could admit
retained,
it,
hold
can't
on. Being retained at this moment, currently, at this time, at this present time.
At this stage.
Currently retained. Let's be clear. We keep it under review. Now I'm moving on.
Well, so that's a yes then. Some are being considered for retention.
If they're not sold this year, they're retained. If they're not sold next year, they're retained.
We're back to
we
we're
are
back to
like-
Councillor
we are
Gurley
like-
and his yeses and
We are like angels. You are like angels dancing on the head of a pin with the minutiae you were going into.
And is that not what scrutiny of the executive is all
And
about?
scrutiny looked at it
And that's okay,
2 nights ago, did they?
Well, this is what scrutiny. Why are we here?
You're here to ask questions. We're trying to answer them. We're moving on. We're moving on. Your next point on this paper?
I have no more points on this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cottingham, did you want to wrap?
I think we said it all.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're looking at noting this report. I'm thanking officers for all the work they do. I'm thanking portfolio holders. Councillor McKinnon and I get on famously, and we do have a scrap. He knows how tough it is. He knows how tough it is. I think residents in the main know how tough it is, and I think we're doing pretty well overall. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham, for all the work you do. Shannon, you and your team. Very good. Thank you. Good night, gentlemen. Okay, I'm moving on to the performance report. I'm looking to introduce this myself, and then my seconder will be Councillor Clark. Thank you very much indeed. What I'm doing here, if we look at page, where are we? Page 41, please, gentlemen, ladies. Where the recommendation is to note the progress we've making in delivering the council strategy delivery plan. To review those areas where the performance is below target, reporting as red. They're very clear now. I don't think the boxes could be much bigger. Page 44, they start. Or amber, note that the appropriate remedial action is taking place, and that's detailed. That although the review of the measures by the council have been improved by the time of reporting, bear in mind that this is a Q4 report going up to the end of March. But while we've been looking at reviewing the measures, they're not applied to this report as the progress presented here predates that approval. The adopted changes will be reflected in 25-26 performance report, whilst this presents results against the measures in place at the time of reporting. So again, was this looked at scrutiny? Thank you. Sorry, I should have known, but we were away on a conference. I'd like to thank, again, officers and portfolio holders for the greens. I'm a little bit confused that we are at 14, develop and adopt a refreshed Newbury master plan pending confirmation. Were they going to do it or not? Claire Lawrence, and could you help? What is number 15 in terms of the Newbury master plan? When are we going to confirm it? Have we confirmed it since Q4? It's sitting there as a white, not a red or an amber. What's going on?
So my understanding is that was a target that went in as part of, not obviously not this May, last May, but council didn't ever give a timescale for it. So consequently, the to be confirmed is that what is the timescale for delivery of this? Next year, obviously, the measures, the performance measures have changed. I've been in discussion with Councillor Pemberton is whether or not we need to renew the master plan. And having had oversight of that just literally in the last couple of days, going through that, I don't think we do. I think it's still a relevant document and we have made significant progress against some of those actions.
And are still doing so. So I'm not sure that that needs to be there. Councillor Gawley, number 13, percentage of permanent pothole and edge of road repairs completed. I believe that's on the up. Can you give us some assurance?
Absolutely is. We're a bit of a victim of our own success there, where we changed the criteria to fill more potholes than the previous administration, and that led to more potholes being raised and filled during the winter this year. But we're back up at 90% already through May, and expecting to be back on target by the end of June. So hopefully we'll get those numbers very soon to make sure we're back at that 95% target.
Grateful to you for that. Obviously, the pedestrianisation was delayed, but it is now in place. So that one's gone from red to green. I will come to Anne-Marie Dodds, if I may, because Councillor Codling is on holiday. The adopting of a plan to close the attainment gap that was not achieved. I'd like an update, please, if you would.
Yeah, certainly there are multiple plans around closing the achievement gap, including, for example, the Send and Inclusion strategy and the delivery plan that sits underneath that. There is also a plan around the school readiness in terms of early years. So there are multiple plans in multiple areas. And what we have agreed to do is to pull together a data set that would allow a deeper understanding of what this is and a reword of what the target says, as opposed to having a single plan, because we already have multiple plans in existence, but it's difficult to demonstrate where we're closing that gap because it looks at multiple data sets. So it would look at data sets in the early years, it would look at data sets in school achievement and attendance, it would look at data sets around SEND. So it's the complexity of the ask and the capture of that statement which is causing the confusion. So I don't have a plan, I have multiple plans and multiple data sets that would track this.
I don't want to get to Q1 performance report with that as a red. If it needs redefining, get it redefined. And let's see if we're adopting the suitable plans that will impact the attainment gap. Let's get it right. Otherwise, it will just hang around looking like we haven't done what we needed to do. Sorry, with you again, Marie Dodds. The caseworker, the case loads, cases allocated, 19, I read that 19 social workers have more than 18 cases allocated them. I think might have been trending down, and we've now got another spike. There is some AI, magic notes, I believe you're starting to use to give a productivity gain. But again, that looks off before the opposition tell me it is, and they will. But let's get a bit of a understanding now, please.
Okay, so our children in child in need, child protection and looked after are in line with national averages and statistical neighbours. So our numbers are tracking where you would expect them to. I can share the detail of average caseloads in certain teams where we're seeing some movement from that. So Family Safeguarding East, the average case numbers for social workers in there are 23. Average case numbers for Family Safeguarding in the West is 17. For central team is 15. You see the disabled children team have caseloads on average of 21, and not social workers but personal advisors have caseloads of 33 on average for the 16 plus team. So there is quite some variance in the different teams with the different caseloads. As you said, Chair, we are supporting social workers wherever possible, and the use of magic notes as an AI tool is reducing the administrative burden on the social workers so that we can concentrate on our relationship-based practice, which is allowing social workers to spend more time face-to-face with children and families and less time in the office typing up the notes, which is supporting those social workers to manage the caseloads that we've got. But we do continue to work on those caseloads. But as children are coming through the front door and children require our support, I think it's important to point out in that, because you would want to understand that we are still confident that children are in the right part of the system. And we are also tracking in line with the national average and statistical neighbours about the children's cases who are closing. So this is not a case of children's cases are opening and not closing. So in all the indicators, using the chat tool, which is the Ofsted data set that we're tracking in line with national and statistical neighbours. So I'm confident that our overall caseload of children is correct and where we would want it to be, but we remain challenged by the caseloads that our social workers have.
We do, but we're not alone in that, are we? Okay, I think that's gone over some of the, or most of them, that has got a bit of context to them before we open up to the floor. Any other comments from the executive? And then I saw you, Councillor Sumner. I also saw you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Sumner first, please.
Thank you, Leader. Again, I'll raise the points that I raised Tuesday night, and Councillor Cottingham very bravely fended them all off across to the other side of the table. Not that mine were particularly barbed, but colouring. We're going through that phase of every time we look at the report, it's a different report, different format. But there's one thing that seems to be consistent, and that's that there's somebody that struggles with reds, browns, and greens. I can't see easily, and I know Councillor McCrow, would he be sitting in the room, would be saying exactly the same thing, what the actual flags are. You wonder what I was going to say then, did you? Flags are. So can we think about these sort of things, please? I know it's not a major disability, but let's consider it, please.
You've asked it.
I know we all get tired early, but I've been raising this point since I've been here.
You've asked it, and we will address it.
Thank you. To my mind, green is achieved, red is not achieved, and amber is we're working on it. I don't believe we have any ambers in this. I'm informed we don't have any ambers in this. Clearly, I can't actually identify. Thank you very much. To my mind, achieved is green, succeeded is green, succeeding is not. And I think there needs to be a reflection of that. And I also raised the point that you did with regards to not having confirmed dates in. You, I think, rightly raised an eyebrow at that one. To my mind, this is a 24-25 target and a report at the end of 24-25, and there still isn't a date in it. Wherever the responsibility sits, it should be regarded as a failed target, in my opinion.
You're mild-mannered, you're softly spoken, and yet you're doing what Councillor McKinnon does. He's not so softly spoken. You're making a statement. I'm looking for a question.
Well, do you agree, Leader, as it's your report?
Agree with what? I agree with actually.
Do you agree with the statements I've just made, Leader? Let's make it. I can get crayons out if it's easier for you, but I won't be able to tell you what colour they are.
If you want to repeat it, because it sounded like a statement, really.
Oh, that's because you switched off halfway through, wasn't it?
Probably.
Do you agree that succeeding is not green because it's ongoing? And do you agree that a 24-25 target throughout the entire year for an end-of-year report, still not establishing a target, is a failed target, not a blank target?
I think I agree to have a look at that very carefully.
That's a very non-committal response, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader. I have some questions that relate to items 5, 6 and 9. And Ms Dodds spoke very eloquent and clearly about what these represent. My concern is, and it's a question for you rather than Ms Dodds, I think, is what does this tell what do these items tell our audience, your audience? This is a dashboard, and I wonder how many people on the outside looking in would know that having 18 cases, not having 18 or more than 18 cases allocated to our social workers, what does that mean to our children? How many people would, looking at the number 6, number of children in care placed in unregistered provision? Now, we know that that's not desirable, but sometimes it's inevitable. So people might ask, well, what does that mean? Are our children safe? And lastly, adopting a plan to close the attainment gap tells people nothing. What would tell people, what would inform people better would be something that gave an understanding of what the attainment gap is and how that might be changing. So I'm not asking for an explanation. It's a request that you look at these in terms of what messages are our audience receiving.
Okay, so your points are well made, and yet you now have a bit of empowerment to scrutinise this. We've just put a Children and Family Services Scrutiny Committee together that you chair. I don't know if you've sorted your work programme out, but if I were you, I'd be looking at some of this, but I'm not telling you what to do. But, you know, we need to tease this out and we need to improve. You're quite right. We agree on that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let's try and work together to do so. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, please don't wait until the next scrutiny committee meeting. I mean, that could start.
Work's going on it all the time. Work's going on it all the time. But I'm saying that the scrutiny empowerment you have can be brought to bear as well. Okay, other comments? Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Leader. First one is on page 71. I'm being picky here, to be frank, but I think the blue line should be above the red line. If you look at the numbers.
Footfall in Newbury, Hungerford and Thatcham Town.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers on the bottom 2 lines, the blue line should be above the red line. I'm being picky, I accept.
No, it's fair enough. It looks on the face of it, you're correct. I don't know who put that graph together.
I might be helpful anyway. More importantly, on
but we'll put that right if it's wrong. Thank you.
More importantly, on page 74, I was concerned by what seems like a very rapid increase in domestic abuse incidents. I wonder whether anybody's got any comment on that. I appreciate it's mostly Thames Valley Police, so it may well be we need to get feedback from them.
Yeah, I think we rather take that away and come back to you, sir.
Just looks slightly alarming.
It's a spike, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
That's all, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. It's like we as opposition members are here to scrutinise the executive, and I know that you and the executive welcome that scrutiny. I would hope we don't get into the situation where that scrutiny is avoided, however temporarily, by saying, well, the Scrutiny Commission can look at this. I think this is an important venue for executive members to answer questions in its own right, and I hope you agree with that. Like you, well, not like you, you've been here for a lot longer than I have, but I have never sat through a performance report like this, where the executive member said to a big fat red that they're a victim of their own success. I thought that was incredibly impressive spin, and my hat is tipped to you, Councillor Gurley. Now I have some questions, Leader. And this question is to Councillor Gurley. Let's see if he gets the opportunity to answer it. Item 13. So percentage of permanent pothole and edge of road repairs completed within 28 days. This is the one that you're a victim of your own success. I remember your manifesto, Councillor Gurley, and it said that dangerous potholes would be repaired within 72 hours. I'm just wondering where the performance indicator is for that in this report.
Yeah, I mean, we look at a broad range of metrics with regards to potholes. You probably aware there are several different SLAs that we measure, and the permanent ones are focused on the 28-day one. You're quite right, that is the only metric in here reporting to permanent pothole repairs.
So that, to clarify, forgive me, that manifesto commitment of yours to repair dangerous potholes within 72 hours is not being tracked as part of the performance indicator?
No, it is tracked, but it is not in this performance report. Like I said, there are multiple different levels of service level for potholes. Dangerous ones actually get fixed in 2 hours. We don't report that publicly here, but we do have that information available.
That's a very interesting remark there. Dangerous potholes are repaired within 2 hours. That's a fact, is it? All dangerous potholes are fixed within 2 hours.
Those that are reported are fixed within 2 hours when they've been inspected and judged to need that. So those dangerous potholes, the most severe, are fixed within 2 hours. That is a service level. That's true.
That's a service level, but is it actually being achieved?
I don't have that data here in front of me right now. As I said, this is the metric that is reported in the performance pack, is the 28-day metric.
Right, so leader, I think you know why I'm asking the question here. You are there as an executive because you presented a manifesto to the public and they bought it. They liked yours better than ours. And I cannot, for the life of me, and this was one of your big 6 to fix. Remember that one? The big 6 to fix. It's coming. It's coming, but it has a context, leader. There is a context to this. The big 6 to fix. This was one of your big 6 things you said you do. Why on earth would you not tell the public how on earth you're doing against those manifesto commitments, the top 6? I just don't understand.
So you said leader, so I'll take it.
Right, yeah, here you go.
I'll take it. You might remember, and let's take a little bit of time to work up this answer. You might remember we ended up several years ago with about 170 KPIs. You couldn't see the wood for the trees. You couldn't see the wood for the trees. It wasn't a performance report. It was a tome. It went on forever. So we've tried to crystallize it down into certain areas that we think are vital. Attainment gap, you betcha. Caseloads, you betcha. The one you've mentioned is clearly important. And I don't want to just add it in flight, because you might mention another one at the next exec. I might add that. And so we go back towards 170, and that's not where we're going. But you've asked the question. We're going to get you the answer. At the next exec, and probably sooner, I'm going to read it out. So we're not trying to actually, not give this information, because it is important. But I don't want to suddenly flesh this all out again, such that we lose the big picture stuff. Now, that is important, those potholes, because they're dangerous. And we're going to give you the answer on that.
Thank you very much, leader. Yeah, I've got 1 or 2 more. And in fact, rather than ask Councillor Clark, one other item that was in your big 6 to fix was earlier care assessments. And I don't see that being reported here either. And you've actually given a good answer there to my previous question, leader. So can I ask you to add that one to the list?
You can ask me to consider adding it. And again, you make a persuasive comment there. You really do. And I'm not dismissing it. But I don't want to just knee-jerk either, if you don't mind.
No, don't knee-jerk it. But hopefully you take the point that these are what you got elected on.
But I think I did take the point. I think my responses are taking the point without changing the report on the run. But believe me, your comments don't get it. They strike home. So I want to move on. You said you had another one.
Go one more. Go one more. Councillor Gaines.
She's phoning a friend at the moment.
That's okay. Councillor Gaines, how are you this evening?
Truthfully?
Yes. Oh, well.
I spent all day, firstly at Liverpool LGA.
I'm sorry I couldn't join you.
4 hours. Microphone. And then 4 hours in the car coming back, getting back here at about, I think about 10 to 5.
You did very well. Item 14.
You did ask.
I did ask. I'm delighted that you're here. Look at this. Adopt the West Berkshire local plan. On track, succeeding. Councillor Gaines, this does not tell the full story, does it? This is a local plan that you try to withdraw. And my question to you is, given that the local plan that you have now adopted has Pinson's Hill in line for houses that were not in our local plan, has extra houses in Thiel and Coldash that were not in our local plan, and has 1,000 extra houses in North East Thatcham. Given those facts, and given that the residents of those areas are going to be watching this, either live or when I send it to them on Facebook, do you regret pausing our local plan on taking power in May 2023, given what has happened since then, and given the serious degradation of the local plan that we now, and residents now, have to suffer?
No.
Thank you very much for that answer.
And given the beauty of a dynamic reporting system, Teams chat, Councillor Gawley has just informed me of it's not a KPI in here, but I believe you'd like to add something to the pothole repair.
Yeah, for the 2 hour most dangerous potholes, it's 100% completion for Q4 within 2 hours.
Thank you, Councillor Gurley. It's a shame you couldn't provide such a clarification for Mr. Allen when he was here about the consultation.
So, thank you. I'm proposing this report is the recommendations in this report are adopted. I have a seconder in Councillor Clark. Before we go to the vote, I think Councillor Can indicated.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It was just really more of a query because I'm sort of the new guy in the room. And the manifesto commitment, I think, was quite right. But isn't the target and the goal to get to the point where you don't have dangerous potholes, you don't let them get there? So the whole point of reducing the depth of the hole is so you don't end up getting to the point where you have dangerous potholes and reducing it. That was really my, just like to ask.
It's a good one because you were saying to me the other day, with all the other work we're doing on the roads, please, I won't put words in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, with the continued investment from this council into highways, we've been able to double the number of schemes in terms of resurfacing, and that will get ahead of the pothole challenge. You know, we all know, you know, that prevention is better than cure. You know, and doubling the number of schemes this year in terms of, you know, resurfacing and surface dressing will help, you know, stem this tide and solve the root cause of the challenge. So yeah, I think that, along with the combination of depth change, will have a significant impact through this year into next year. I think it will be a really interesting test this winter, if I'm to be completely honest. You know, this winter, depending on what we get, if it's very wet and very cold, then, you know, it could be challenging. But we will have done double the number of schemes and got ahead of some of the worst road condition we've got in the district, you know, and starting to reinvest again. So yeah, I think the test will be this winter for sure. But absolutely, prevention better than cure.
Grateful for all input on that from both sides. Things for us to think about. All those in favour of this report being and the recommendation therein, thank you very much. Next one up is the Voluntary and Charitable Sector Memorandum of Understanding. It's something I press for. It's something actually the voluntary sector pressed for. They pressed me to get involved in giving them some understanding of how we work with them. We worked on it quite a bit of time. I'm delighted to see it here. It's got endorsement, and I'll ask Patrick Clark to come in as well because it affects your area, Mr. Coe, as well. It's recommended that the executive agrees to the adoption and invites the VCS bodies named within to do the same. The response has been very, very good. And I'm looking for a bit of a signing ceremony in a way, Mr. Coe, at Shore House or something like that, where we can launch it, because it gives clarity. I'm proposing it. Councillor Clark, are you happy to second? Anything to add to my introduction, sir?
Well, I think the important thing is that we're all working together, and that that the charity sector and us are very, very clear about how we can do that. Beyond that, I think there's not much to add.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other comments from this side of the chamber? Councillor Stewart, yeah.
Thank you. As I said at the beginning, clearly I have an interest in that. I work in the charity sector and have done for over 10 years. So I absolutely welcome anything that cements a relationship and supports the voluntary sector in particular. You mentioned clarity. So my question is concerning the outcomes from this piece of work. As we often hear in this chamber, where is the action plan? So this feels like a good start, but how will we know that actually it's effective, that what the sector, in fact, I should say all parties involved, what they want to get from this is being achieved, particularly as we know that officer time will be used in delivering this, therefore affects our residents?
Well, you've got to start from somewhere, getting it in place. And then you look to the voluntary sector to actually tell us how it's working. It may need to be tuned, Councillor Stewart, but we've got it. We're nearly there, launching it. Mr. Coe, did you want to come back about that?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just to entirely agree. This is, I think, a sort of kicking off document that says, this is our statement of intent and a shared commitment. I met with Rachel from the Volunteer Centre and Tim from Connecting Communities Berkshire on Tuesday of this week, and together we are working up a work plan that we can. Our intent is to publish this and publish the work plan. I think there's some, we can see some really good examples of voluntary sector work from our neighbours as well, so that people can see what are these organisations doing together in order to hopefully make lives better.
Exactly what I wanted to hear.
Okay, thank you, members. I'm looking for a vote on this. I proposed it. Councillor Clark has seconded it. Good work. Thank you. Got there, and we'll launch it in due course, in short order. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 10, motion adopting open space in new development. Councillor Gaines, will you introduce, please?
Thank you, Leader. It's a pleasure to see this member's motion come into executive. Proposing motions are a great opportunity for members to effect positive change or to lobby council to take action on their behalf. So thank you, Councillor Amatoraj. Firstly, an apology for this has taken too long to come to executive. It was due to go to planning advisory and not come to this forum, but because of the reorganisation of those advisory groups, it was delayed. The motion proposed to ensure that public open spaces on new developments are taken on by the council where possible. We've investigated the areas of the motion that we can influence, and the following recommendations have been made. This does mean that there have been some amendments which I hope will make this acceptable and achievable solution. The recommendation is for executive to support the motion in principle with those changes. So these are the recommendations. To endorse a review of the applications of the council's policies regarding securing and adopting public open spaces. This would include financial and legal implications. Enhance the engagement with the local parish and town councils to arrive at a suitable solution with regarding funding, management and adoption of the public open space. It does appear that many town and parish councils seem quite keen to adopt these open spaces already, but for open spaces that already exist. Also, the last option, or the last recommendation, was to ask our local MPs to lobby government to resolve the issues through legislation. One of the big issues with public open spaces is that actually, as an authority, we have no control over what happens with open spaces. We need government to do much more in the way of legislation, so that it maybe not force, but certainly encourage developers and landowners to make open spaces over to local authorities. So a few items to note. It's not possible to compel a developer to allow for open spaces to be adopted. It's the land ownership that matters. Sometimes the land ownership is not the same as the developer's ownership. So we can request, but we can't compel. We also can't refuse planning applications based on a landowner or developer refusing to adopt an open space. An S106 agreement for open space will be entered into regardless of whether or not an open space is to be adopted. So that's a condition that we put in place, but it doesn't mean we have to do, they have to allow us to adopt an open space. Emerging planning policy does meet the aims of the motion in respect of securing quality open space. That's our local plan. And although parish and town councils are able to comment on planning applications, they're not routinely consulted or offered the option to adopt open spaces. And that may be something that we can actually ask government to look at. One of the significant issues with open spaces which are not adopted is that the residents who unwittingly purchase the houses concerned because they don't necessarily read all the fine print on a contract, are very often subjected to management charges and ground rent in perpetuity, very often causing problems when they try to sell those properties in the future. However, this unfortunately falls outside the planning process and not within this council's control. So in conclusion, I would ask the executive to accept the recommendations set out in the paragraph 2 with the amendments listed. Thank you.
And you're so proposing?
I am so proposing.
And I'll second that. Any other comments from the executive members? Turning to Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Gaines for explaining the complexity behind the whole business of public open spaces, developments, adoption, land ownership, management, companies being formed, etc. Those of us who've been around a bit in council know that this is a problem, and many members have been roped into trying to address residents' concerns. I don't see what difference this motion makes. I think there will still be problems that we will have to deal with, and I just don't understand. Other than giving you an opportunity to explain how difficult a situation is, and that's welcome, I don't know what the point of this is, really.
Well, the intention.
So the question is, what does this achieve?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just want a question, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you're right. It's to explain to people why that situation arises, because as you so quite rightly say, not necessarily everybody understands the principles. And as I say, I've had a particular incident in Hungerford recently where we've got a development where people didn't realise that a lot of their road, their lights, their open spaces weren't actually adopted, and they have to pay in perpetuity. So what I would say would make a difference is to lobby our MPs to look at legislation to put in the new MPPF, which apparently we're going to get it later in this year, to have something in there to say make it more robust when it comes to allocating open spaces to councils or parish councils.
Okay, Councillor Somner was next.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I've got exactly this case from a development that took place several years ago in my area, and Councillor Oko in particular, as my fellow ward member, spent many hours liaising with the residents, and we were not able to move it forward. The issue was, and the issue will remain, that our officers were not prepared to take it on initially because of the cost of making the open space usable, making it safe. And I think this is something that we need to be mindful of. It's not just a case of getting it signed over. So are we confident that the costs that are associated with it need to be borne by the developer, not necessarily by the residents, I agree, but not by the council either, and certainly not by the parish?
Agreed. I mean, that's one of the issues about it, which is what we can do, things like putting S106 agreements in to make sure that is looked after in that way. We've got to have them when they're on site. They've got to be put up to the right standard before we would adopt them, of course. So it wouldn't be a question of piece of blank ground and no playing equipment, but it's got to be the right equipment. It's got to be ROSPA covered, and et cetera, et cetera. So we'd expect it to be a certain level before.
And I accept that, and I think that's the issue that residents especially need to be aware of, because they see this going through. There will be an expectation, and that expectation needs to be set. The developers can only hand it over to us. We will only take it on as an authority if it meets certain standards and safety standards. And to be clear, the area that I'm talking about in Ford's Farm had play equipment on it, but you really wouldn't want to let your kids use it. So, there is a big picture on this, and there's probably a big pound note on the front of it as well. We just need to make sure that everybody is aware of that, and they're not thinking that this is the solution. I know you've got quite clearly in there about the changes in legislation, and rightly so. We need to make sure people are very clear.
Was there a question? I wasn't sure there's a question.
Oh, if we're going to get into this, I'll tell you what, there you are. There's a question mark on the end of it.
Facetious. I'm not being facetious. I wasn't. You made a statement, and I agree with the statement. I just don't know what you want to come back with.
If you disagree, please tell me and make sure everybody else knows about it as well.
I totally agree. As I say, I've got an issue in Hungerford exactly the same way, and there's a couple of playgrounds there, and there's some issues there, definitely. Yeah, we do need to do something about it. It's just we haven't got the legislation now to make a difference. And so that's why we've got to try and get that legislation changed.
Okay, so as seconder, I mean, look, this can help, but the problem is a national one. And we can all lobby MPs, and we will, that says you need to sort this out. Because there are people. We had one, Councillor Pemberton, in our own ward, had two of them. The residents were actually trying to say, you can't come on this land, you can't walk through here. I'm paying money to upkeep this, which they were not able to exclude people. That's the level of misunderstanding going on. They're paying money that they weren't necessarily expecting to pay. It's a mess, and it needs sorting out nationally. I think this does pass your test that says it can make a difference, but it ain't the full silver golden bullet. I'll take a couple over here for a moment, because I've got Councillor Foote and then Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. You've raised my point. I think it does make a difference if we pass this motion. It does send a message, and as we've already discussed, we can't do a great deal, but it's a start, and I think it's important we draw a line in the sand and get that message up to government. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton, we've had personally, but like most of us have, anything to add? And no, that's fine. That's fine. You want to come back, Councillor McKinnon?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about lobbying our MPs. I mean, Councillor Armitage is Newbury Speen, isn't he? I mean, would it not have been quicker, rather than bringing a motion to council and having officers prepare this report and the previous report, just for Councillor Armitage to have spoken to Lee Dillon?
Well, he hasn't done that, but what we're talking about tonight is a motion that has turned into this recommendation. That's what we're going to take. So, members.
Leader, can I just come back on something?
Very quickly, please.
Okay,
yeah.
so I've just been informed by, yes, Claire, that we could do a briefing note for members and town and parishes and residents and put it on the website.
Do that.
And the other thing is, there's a meeting with MHCLG 2 weeks' time. We will raise this at that point.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. Very helpful. Proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much, Executive. Okay. My next one is healthcare and new developments. This is Councillor Gaines again, but I think this one will be supported by Councillor Clark as seconder. Again, over to you to introduce and propose, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. So the Health and Scrutiny Committee Task and Finish Group, Healthcare in New Developments, presented their recommendations to members of the Health Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of June 2024. The task group was made up of Bob, ICB, Public Health and our planning colleagues. The report is the response to the administration, by the administration to the recommendations made. It's quite a lengthy original report and it's quite a lengthy document in itself, as there's an awful lot of recommendations in there. So I'm not going to go through each one of them. I'm just going to do a little bit of a précis on some of the high points of what those recommendations are. So they propose 5 recommendations for consideration. The recommendations aim to enhance collaboration between the planning team and the District Health Service to make development in the future much more healthy aware. So healthy design, healthy environments. So what we've just been talking about, open spaces, children's playgrounds, pavements rather than verges, those sorts of things. And those are the sort of things we should be looking at for planning in the future. So, recommendation 1 was planning and health to continue to improve collaboration on planning consultations and in developing flexible ways of working together. So there was a couple of things in there. Senior members of the planning and primary care estates to meet regularly to review their engagement, hold each other to account and work closely on negotiations. Both the ICB and the planning team agreed on that action. West Berkshire planning team to work with GPs' practices directly to understand their needs and requirements. The ICB did not agree with this. They don't feel that we should be talking to GPs directly. They feel that that's their role, that's not our role, but we need to look at how we're going to engage with them in the future. Recommendation 2, due opportunities in funding and delivery of primary care in the community. There were 4 different recommendations within that routine. One of them was the senior team at primary care estates to consider how they can input into the CIL charging structure when the review takes place. The ICB agreed, but it's not yet been actioned. And the reason for that is because the CIL process, CIL review, is about to start a new process to look at CIL charging and CIL in its entirety. And there's a group of people within planning that are putting that together. Planning policy manager to form a working group to review the CIL spending, which I've just said. Planning responses to be explored but not yet completely actioned because we've just put the group together. Recommendation 3, the healthy planning protocol. A peer review was requested and to consider implementing the changes and recommendations arising from the review. This wasn't considered necessary for a formal review, as there are many other ways and other mechanisms to be explored, including things like sharing best practice. The planning team with developers will work to finalise guidance and supporting documentation to help facilitate this. So planning team agreed to that and the action is actually in progress. Healthy impact, sorry, on the screen. Healthy impact assessments and SLAs are policy requirements of the local plan and will be accompany relevant, mostly major, and that's important at this point, mostly major applications. Maybe go out to minor applications in future, but it's really about things like the SPD for North East Thatcham. And planning and public health continue to develop the protocol and guidance documents to assess these health impact assessments. Recommendation 4 is to implement a healthy planning protocol, and there were 6 different recommendations within that. I'm not going to go through them all. Review if planning have adequate resources needed to implement their HIAs, and they're going to be funding to be sought from public health reserves. Consider the planning team further training to members on healthy places. That's for our members as such, and that's been agreed by planning. I don't really know what's funny, Councillor Berwick.
Well, no, keep going, please.
Recommendation 5.
It could be having a
wider approach to healthy places in creating health promotion. There's a couple of things in there that I thought was important. Planning team to consider how best to engage with developers. That I think is the really important thing going forward, is the engagement with developers, because they're the people that can actually influence how they design the houses to be much more healthy, how they design the sites to be much more healthy. As I alluded to earlier on, things like having pavements instead of verges so people can walk from their houses to the shops, to the playground, etc. If they have to go on the verges, they tend to not do, they tend to get in their car because of the muddy grass, etc. And the council to consider community engagement and also engagement with parish and town councils and members for continuity and accountability in design and keeping communities sustainable. With the help from our town and parish councils and members at committee, we can influence how design and sustainability can be dealt with on sites. So the planning team were very engaged in that, and they will seek to achieve good community engagement on future planning policies and follow best practice in terms of design and healthy places. This will be really important when we look at the SPD for North East Action. My ask is for executive to endorse recommendations in this report. Thank you, Leader.
Do we have any other contributions? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Yeah, I mean, I support this, obviously, but I just wanted to sort of emphasise how much I support this. Health in all policies is something that I like to see, I love to see, but also in terms of planning, it's so important that we raise the profile of health in planning, that we raise the profile of the importance of things like active travel, of good design, of ensuring that the places people live are made to encourage activity and getting out there.
Thank you. Any other comments from executive members? Over to the other side. Looks like we're comfortable with it. And therefore, we proposed it. It's been seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Right, the contract for award, 9-month block beds Bupa UK. Councillor Clark, you're introducing. Do you have a seconder? I'll second. That's fine. Over to you, sir.
Okay, well, I'll keep this reasonably short because I think it's pretty much business as usual. We need 25 beds. This is the best way of getting them.
That is reasonably short. Thank you very much. We need it. It's not unusual. We're proposing it. It's been seconded. I'm almost there. No? It's part 2. We're moving into part 2 as well. That's where we actually adopt it. So noted at this stage. Thank you very much. And we'll have the same discussion briefly, I hope, on item 13. Councillor Cottingham. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So yes, what's come to today's meeting is the proposed disposal of one of our commercial property. So it's 1 and 2 Cleveland Gate Retail Park, Gisborough. We do have an offer on the table, and as I've discussed earlier, it is in accordance with the current property investment strategy with regarding the Property Investment Board, with regarding the disposal of our commercial property.
Understood. I'm happy to second that. But again, the decision will be made in part 2. I'm not seeing any other members on either side wishing to ask any questions on that. I may be wrong. So I'm going to note it at this stage, and we'll come back to it. But now we will go into the members' questions. And the first one up is from Councillor McKinnon to Councillor Gaines.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. Firstly, let me correct your quoted question. What Councillor Poole actually said was often favouring. Now, maybe it would have been more prudent to say often appearing to favour, but let's look at it from a layman's perspective for a moment. Newbury held Lib Dem seats on both town and district councils. Recent developments are Sanderford East, Sanderford West, Lapwing, Donington Valley, South Newbury. Thiel, Lib Dem for over 20 years, 2 large new developments. Thatcham, Lib Dem on both town and district, and reconfirmed in the recent by-election. The biggest development programme across that area and 2,500 houses in a greenfield site in a recent plan, which I would have reiterate, we had no choice in adopting. Now let's look at the historically strong Conservative areas. Lambourne, Downlands, Great Shefford, Upper Bucklebury, I don't recall any new developments in those areas, despite the benefits that small pockets of development would bring by injecting vibrancy and viability to those villages. However, I am certainly not saying that anyone chose the areas mentioned for development along political lines. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. So it sounded like you were doubling down there until the very end when you said you wouldn't possibly dream of suggesting so. Given that you said the wording that Councillor Poole used was favoured rather than appeared to favour, do you agree with her comments that we favoured those sites?
As I've just said, she should have said often favouring.
Often favouring? Oh, that's worse.
No, it's how it. Why is it off? Why is it? Sorry, often appearing to favour. I beg your pardon. Often appearing to favour, and I've just read out to you Newbury, Theale, Thatcham.
When the plan was started, they weren't all Lib Dem areas, you know.
I beg to differ.
Okay.
And this you might actually add to your information from earlier on. 2,500 houses. There would not have been 2,500 houses. You didn't put that in the original plan. If there weren't enough houses in the original plan that went through to the inspector, which is why he added those 1,000 additional houses.
No, that's not right.
It is right.
It's not right.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you.
Good. Well, you
Okay, we've had the supplementary. Now moving on to B. Now B is Councillor Bowick to Councillor Collingham.
Thank you, Councillor Burke, for your question. A empty property owned by a charity may be exempt from council tax for up to 6 months from the date that the last resident vacated, provided that the property was being used for the purpose of the charity up to the date the last occupier moved out. After that, after 6 months, the full charge is due. Where a property has been empty for more than 1 year, but less than five additional premium, 100% can be added to the council tax bill. Where a property has been empty between 5 and 10 years, then a 200% premium can be applied. And for those properties which have been empty for more than 10 years, a 300% premium can be added to the bill. The government has set out some exceptions to the premium charge. However, these exceptions do not specifically cover charities. However, one of the aims of the national policy is to ensure properties are in use. We are committed to relieve homelessness and provide affordable housing within West Berkshire, or a fairer West Berkshire for opportunities for all. So we will be approaching the organisation to see whether we can support them in bringing the properties back into use. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I think you're going to speak to the charity that I mentioned here. Is that it? To see about. If you'll forgive me, Chairman, I'd just like to kind of set the scene here. Small charity, turnover £24,000 a year. They have a small number of properties, which in Aldermaston, which is protected area. They've got a couple of cottages that they want to combine into one, because as two cottages, they don't meet modern needs. Elderly people benefit from these almshouses, and I think we'd all agree that council are very grateful to those sorts of charities because they are addressing an important need. They put it in planning application, which failed because they're listed buildings. The properties have been empty for a year and they're having to pay council tax. It's nothing to do with them. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're being caned on council tax.
My understanding, rightly or wrongly, is if there's been a delay because of planning, that potentially gives us an exception. We have discussed this previously.
Can we take it?
Yeah, I think we can't, obviously we can't give exceptions for the sake because everyone will be asking exception. But I think when there is a circumstance where planning is in situ, which is then caused you to go into this period, they may well be qualified.
Take it offline. You asked it because the broader point has got public interest, but of course you can converse with us at any time about this particular one. which is clearly something on your mind. Right, the next one up, I think, is Councillor McKinnon, again to Councillor Gaines.
Thank you for this question, Councillor McKinnon. The council sets out its site selection methodology dated January 2023 on our website, which will be included in our published response. This is based on the guidance contained in the National Planning Policy Guidance, NPPG. Key considerations for site selection include the need to meet housing targets, protect the environment, including the North Wessex Downs national landscape, and prevent flooding, and support economic growth. Public consultation is an important aspect of the local plan process. However, the consultation, public opinion must be balanced with planning considerations such as housing need and environmental factors, including statutory consideration. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Councillor Gaines. I think you may have answered a slightly different question to the one that's on the screen. So this question was referring to Councillor Poole's accusation that Conservative councillors selected sites based on them being in Liberal Democrat areas. I'm asking you whether, if that was the case, it would be misconduct in public office. I wasn't asking for a list of criteria that should be used.
No, that's the answer I have had from legal.
Did you read it before you read it out to me?
Yes.
That's not an answer.
We actually looked at this before this meeting. I think you've had an answer.
I've an answer to something
You may
else.
not like the answer.
I do not, Leader, you're right. Do I not like that?
So what do you want to do?
Oh, okay.
Well, I've got another go coming up, Karen.
Hang on. I've got, we're trying to get to the point where we can clarify your supplementary or clarify this.
While decisions made during a public consultation may give rise to concerns, whether they amount to misconduct in public office depends heavily on the specific facts and circumstances involved. It's important to note that the local plan examiner often offers an independent and impartial review of the local plan process, ensuring compliance with relevant legal and procedural standards. I apologise, I actually only got back here at 10 to 5, and that was a question, that was an answer I only got back at 10 to 5.
Okay, I think we'll move on. Thank you very much. The next one up is Councillor Burke, again to Denny. Councillor Gaines, it's been a long day, I know. It's been a long week, actually. Sorry, Councillor Gaines.
That's
and
okay.
if you need to take a moment,
No,
I'll
that's
take
okay.
a different question, which doesn't involve you.
I've got the next question anyway.
Lovely. No, I could have took the one to Councillor Cottingham if it would have helped you.
The council has a variety of powers to secure compliance with planning conditions where it's considered expedient to do so. Breaches of planning conditions are investigated by planning enforcement officers in accordance with the prioritisation set out within the council's enforcement plan, which aims to ensure that high-risk cases with the potential for significant and irreversible harm impact on the environment or local communities are prioritised for investigation. It is not always necessary to instigate formal enforcement action, and some breaches can be resolved through negotiated compliance, for example, through submissions of the necessary information to the council for approval. The safety of our residents and occupants within the emergency planning zone is of paramount importance, and where conditions relate to the effective operation of emergency planning, this will be a significant factor when prioritising investigations and considering expedience of enforcement action. In addition, the enforcement plan is in the process of being refreshed and will set out more specifically our approach to breaches within the detailed emergency planning zone of both AWE sites. Give us supplementary.
I do. I wasn't quite expecting such a wide-ranging response. I thought you might have answered my question around planning breaches, breaches of the conditions imposed upon planning applications in the TPZ, because there's considerable amount of development going on to the south of Aldermaston, and frankly, conditions are not being met. Now, the consequence of that potentially is that in an emergency, there could be significant harm done to the residents and people working in the area. Right now, nobody is tracking this. Nobody in the council, emergency planning, nor planning enforcement track this, and it needs to be. So
when you say,
that's a big statement. That's a big statement. Nobody's tracking it. And I'd like to just get the executive director to address that point, please.
Thank you, Leader. So in terms of planning enforcement, we don't have the resources to track compliance with all conditions. However, if we are aware of any breaches or potential breaches, we will investigate those. And we do rely on residents, on town and parish council and on members to bring that to our attention.
And the local councillor on this council.
Members, yeah. So if you've got examples, please let us have those.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If that's where you're heading, bring on those examples, please.
I'll let you have them as soon as possible.
can I just ask what you meant by major developments, though? Because my understanding is there's been no major developments within the DPZ.
Well, there are.
In recent times.
There are.
All right, take it offline. Yeah. Thank you. You got one more now from Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Gaines. I'm sorry it's been a long day, but we're still going. And happily no tears in the chamber so far.
Give it time.
Thank you, thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I am very disappointed, but not particularly surprised that the Conservative opposition have chosen to bring our hard-working and dedicated officers into this affray. Members make decisions on policy, not officers. Officers recommend, advise, assist, and ensure any decisions made are legal. They do not make policy, but they do enact decisions we make. I would imagine that those officers involved in the local plan are quite offended by this question and its implied slight. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, and I find that answer remarkably incredible. It was your executive member for transformation who cast these officers' integrity into doubt when she said that sites were selected based on the political makeup of those sites, and that
You've got a question, Councillor McKinnon.
I do.
I think he's getting to it, Councillor Gaines. I think he's getting to it.
Could I have a yes or no answer?
I hope he's going to get to it quickly.
No, just rather than pretending to be offended, how about a yes or no answer to the question?
I'm not going to give a yes or no answer to the question. I've given you the answer to that question.
No, I don't. Planning officers were not complicit in the selection of sites.
Thank you very much.
Well, I said no.
You did.
Thank you. So it was councillors then?
You did. And actually, we thought officers might be offended at the inference.
I think they would have been from Councillor Poole's comments, absolutely.
Moving on. Councillor McKinnon. The last one up to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. Yes, big thank you for bringing this to our attention. This has been an oversight with information last published in 2021-22, i.e. the final year of the previous Conservative administration, where the expenses were also not published until highlighted by your question. We have now rectified this with all the up-to-date information. I've double-checked on the intranet, which can be found under councillors' allowance expenses. So it's all there, up to date, and makes for interesting reading.
In fact, it was the last 2 years of the previous administration, 21-22. Yeah. It was 22-23.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it. Yeah. Supplementary.
You're more than welcome. And can I ask when the expenses for the year 24-25 will be published, if they haven't been already?
Nikki Thomas looking at Sarah Clark and sort of scratching their head a bit, but it's a good question.
They're done, so they can be published.
They are published.
They're already on there.
They are published, we're being told.
Yes, they are.
What about that then?
All it took was a cheeky question. Who says you can't do anything in opposition? That's outstanding.
You've done it when you're in power.
Here, here. Lovely job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're through part one. Golly, it's been a long day, but I think very useful, and thank you the way you've engaged. So we're going into part 2. And Thomas, you'll tell us when you've got everybody down there. Do I need to vote? Yeah, I'm looking for support. I'm proposing we go into part 2. I've got a secondary, Councillor Gawley. All those in favour?